We sold our house!
Don't get too psyched because you haven't sold it yet. You're in escrow. Do you understand what escrow is?
Welcome back, everybody, to our podcast here, Heart to Heart with Escrow. I am your host, Maria Gomez with Orange County Escrow, and today's guest is my beautiful friend, Kelly Corona. She's our VP with Orange Coast Title, and so we're going to head into this podcast, and we're going to talk a lot about title, a lot about the things, how we work together, and to assist our clients to have a smooth closing escrow. And so we're going to talk about the importance of what a title is and the various things that we do back, in the scene to make things run the transaction a lot more smoother. So Kelly, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Maria, and thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and talk about what I do on a day-to-day, and I love title. I love what I do, so I'm so happy for you inviting me here. And yes, I'm Kelly Corona with Orange Coast Title. And we're actually neighbors. Our corporate office is right across the
street. Down the street, yeah.
So you can run in and leave docs there for recording.
I actually do. So I save myself sometimes when I'm asking for special messengers, and I'm like, wait a minute, they're like 2 blocks away from me. They used to be, you know what? They used to be right here in the corner. Right here in the corner, around the corner from us, and I think they moved up a little bit higher.
I think we're like a street light or two away.
2 lights away,
But literally, when I put in your address earlier, it was like 2 minutes. I'm like, that's the closest I've ever traveled.
But even though it's Orange Coast Title, it's everywhere because you guys are all over the county and all through the state of how many states?
Actually, we cover all 50 states.
Nice.
And yes, we have footprint everywhere. We can close your real estate transactions in any state. So just because we're called Orange Coast Title, we're not only in Orange County. I'm actually located in LA County, but I do come out to Orange County too. We have clients actually throughout the whole state. We have a lot of clients up north, down to San Diego County. We do business everywhere.
That's good because I know sometimes the name kind of throws it off, and even with my company, it's Orange County Escrow, and I'm also licensed through the state of California. So, with that, it's good to know that you're licensed in all 50 states because some of the times our clients do have, properties or loan officers that do work and are licensed in other states. That's good to know that you guys do have, coverage in all these other states. So how did you get into title? How long you been in title?
I've been in title, you know what? I remember the day I got hired, but I don't remember the year.
Okay.
But let's go back a little bit. So I actually was going to college and I was studying business. And for some reason, my major changed. I don't know how, but I ended up with a bunch of psychology and sociology classes.
Oh, wow.
And turns out that I had a major already in sociology. So I graduated with a degree in sociology and I decided to pursue that career path. And I then got another degree in psychology.
Nice.
So I decided I had a passion working with people and figuring out how I can make a difference in people's lives. But when I was actually going to college, it's a funny story. My parents didn't want me to work. They wanted me to finish college.
Okay.
But I really wanted a job. And I was offered an opportunity through a family friend to work for actually an escrow company.
Really?
Yeah. So actually I have a background in escrow. That's how I got in the business by accident. It was by accident because I just wanted a job.
I say the same thing. I got into this escrow by accident, but yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, hey, I'm hiring. You want to come and work for my escrow company? And I was like, all I thought was like, it's going to get me a paycheck. It's how I can get a job. And
it's real estate.
It's real estate. So I said, I'll figure it out. So I got business cards and I just went and got business. And one thing I actually learned from not knowing anything in the business to after being in the business for over a year in escrow, I learned that if you're willing to learn and if you're a hard worker and good with working people, you'll succeed in this business. And I think it doesn't matter if you're an agent, if you're a lender, escrow, whatever you are. I think you can succeed with those skills. And so I actually left the business as soon as I graduated.
Got it.
So I did let them know, hey, this is just temporarily. I'm gonna go and pursue what I went to school for. And I worked in the mental health business, and I worked
Really?
with children too.
Okay.
I loved working with children. It was my favorite part. I was working with children with autism and special needs, one-on-one
Wow.
therapy.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got to
Look
go to
at you.
homes, and I got to homeschool and just be with little ones. And I really enjoyed working with kids. So my passion, and I have a heart for kids. But I decided to come back in the business. And when I felt that it was the right time to come back in the business, I was given an opportunity to actually come back to work in title. I didn't know where I was going to go. I just knew I wanted to come back in the business. And I left it up to God, and I said, God, you're gonna tell me what way I'm gonna go. And it was like magical. I got presented an opportunity in title, and I said, well, I don't even know what title is, but I'm gonna figure it out.
Right.
And so I got an opportunity with Malay, and I'm thankful for the opportunity that he gave me, because
He's an amazing man.
He's been so amazing, and he
Very
taught me
resourceful.
very resourceful. He's really knowledgeable, very
Yeah.
respected in the industry, and I like getting my hands on files.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to actually close the toughest transactions. And so here we are. Fast forward. I actually probably need to look into how many years it's been, but I started Escrow in 2015.
Okay.
So
Okay. So you've got quite a bit of experience, and then that's good that you got the escrow experience and then the title experience, because they work together,
Hand on hand.
and you have to. And that for me is very important, because a lot of people, and the reason why I do this podcast is because a lot of people don't know what escrow is. And I feel that there needs to be, more education and more, people to understand what our jobs are behind the scene. It's not just you bought a home and you're in escrow, and what is title? What is this? Why are they asking me for a lot of things? So, one of the things, and, we'll get into a little bit more about, what is a title, right? And what is a preliminary report, and why is it important to order these when there is a refi or a sale transaction?
Yes. So title is actually very, very important, and we work very closely with escrow. These are two things that you're always going to require in California in order to purchase and sell a home. So if someone's trying to sell you a property without an escrow and title, you should probably be very careful with that, because
Yes.
wouldn't be a valid transaction in the state of California. And what is title? So title, sometimes people think it's just the ownership of your property, right? It's the grant deed that says this is who the owner is. But what title is actually an insurance policy that a homeowner holds to protect the loss of ownership from liens, judgments, and encumbrances.
Yeah.
So some examples of those is if someone's trying to claim ownership of the property that they don't, or let's say that someone committed fraud, right?
Fraud is the most common. These days.
And I would say right now we've actually been seeing a lot of fraud when it comes to land. So,
Yes.
We as a title company have to do our investigation. I always tell people,
agree.
think as title as your investigators and your detectives for homes, and
Right.
and the title and the preliminary report. So what is a prelim report? A prelim report is a report that's issued and put together by a plant engineers that are actually examiners of a title company. So we actually have a plant that are people putting together these reports.
Okay.
Searching
Yes.
documents that pertain to the property or the owners. That could be the liens, the taxes, the loans, everything that is
Yes,
tied
I
to
agree.
that. And also secured and unsecured liens as well.
Right.
So we need to make sure as a title company that we do our investigation to get everything that pertains to the property. Because if we don't show that on a prelim report, we're ensuring that we're passing from one owner to another owner that it's been free and clear. There's no problems, when the seller sells it and then it goes to the buyer, that there's not going to be any debts that are passing on. So as a title company, when we insure that, we need to be very careful with that, because guess what? If we don't insure ourselves with that, we're the ones that can possibly be liable for that.
And not only just you being liable, I think escrow plays a big part in it, because, we talked about the importance of getting what we called a statement of information. A lot of people think, like, sometimes when I do my, packages, a lot of people are like, why? Are they going to run my social? Are they going to drive my driver's license? No, they're not. But it is very important to complete a statement of information from the very beginning, right?
Correct.
So this statement of information, in my part, what I include in my package is, it includes the last 10 years of residency, last 10 years of employment. It does have your driver's license, it does have your social. They do not run your credit. All they're doing is making sure that there is no liens or judgments or lawsuits or child support that can affect the title. So that way, we're not, running last minute and be like, well, we didn't run the statement of information. Now we're on the day of recording, and guess what? Well, we can't close, and we can't close escrow because a child support just popped down. Well, child support is not that easy to just call the county, depending on the county, but LA County is the most difficult one, and it takes 2 weeks for you to get a demand from child support or any type of release, right? Because for every lien, you require a release.
Yes,
in
correct.
order for, title to record it and eliminate it, so that way the new owner, right, has a clear title. And that's what the title policy insurance is. So let's talk about the various, liens and stuff, and, that you've seen, I think, that affects a title, or maybe an experience that you've had in a transaction where, one, you were proactive, or two, your escrow or the loan officer or anybody was not proactive, where you're like, oh, guess what? We've been asking you guys for this, and there's a reason for it, and and this is why it happened, right?
Yeah.
So give me your scenarios, because there's always juicy scenarios, right?
yes.
And so we're always blamed as, oh, it was escrow, oh, it was title, but
there's someone that always gets blamed. It's always title and escrow's fault, right?
Yeah,
we take it. It's
we
fine.
take the blame.
So you mentioned a really good point, is getting in your statement of information at the very beginning of the transaction. And I always say, hey, if you're taking on a listing appointment, take a blank statement of information with you, whether it's on your laptop or a printed copy. Keep a stack in your car, because when you sign the listing contract, get that SI filled out, send it over to title. Open up your title report, prelim report, with your title rep when you sign that contract.
Ahead of time.
Because if anything that comes up, you have enough time to take care of those items with the homeowner.
Right.
Anyone can close the easy deals.
Right.
And my passion working with Orange Coast Title is because we're known to close the toughest deals. And one of our sayings is, we don't say no until we kick it all the way upstairs. And when I say upstairs, it goes to the big boss,
underwriters,
but it goes to, I can take it even up to the owner.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
We have those relationships in our company to really get your toughest transactions closed. So, yes, statement of informations do require your history of the past 10 years, where you've lived, if you've had any other names, schools, occupations. What happens is that some people have very common names.
Right.
And whenever we're searching for liens, judgments, we need to match to see which ones belong to the homeowners. Now, one thing with Orange Coast Title is that we don't run the SI for the buyer. We're just running it for the seller.
Yeah.
So that's something that I know.
There's a lot of other title companies out there that I've had hiccups, and this has been one of our challenges, and they run the buyer's SI. And then all of a sudden, the buyer has an IRS lien or judgment, and they're like, well, they have to pay it before we close escrow. And I'm like, well, not necessarily, because they're not legally yet an owner. It becomes an owner when you close escrow.
It'll come up later.
It'll come back later. Let them kind of figure that out. But I like to tell them, hey, you got to you got a lien coming. What do you want to do? Well, you can give them the option of settling at the time of escrow if they'd like, but that's a good thing to know that you only focus on the seller, and it should be just the seller. I mean, it's good information if the buyer has something coming that they might not know of, so that it doesn't bring a surprise later on, like, hey, you got a lien on the property. But just know that if you do owe the IRS or child support, or you're in some type of lawsuit and you're the buyer, just know that they're going to find you.
Yeah. And my favorite part is reviewing prelim reports too. So I review prelim reports for all my clients. I like to know what's on there and if there's any issues that we should address, especially when it comes to list pendants. So list pendants are lawsuits, litigations in the court, and anyone can file these. So if someone is trying to stop a sale or trying to fight some type of situation with the owner, that's how they can stop the sale of a property until it's fixed in the court of law or they come to an agreement. But you cannot sell a property until either that's released or the court has issued a release. So it's important because sometimes you might have a listing appointment and the seller doesn't mention anything to you. And once, let's say you like to open title and escrow once you have a deal together. And once that prelim report comes out, let's say you had a 7-day close. Well, guess what? If you got a list pendants and it's a challenging one, you might be sitting for at least 30, 60 days, depending what county it's in, to get a court date or fight it.
And if you get that attorney to remove that lease pendants in order for title to insure it.
Yeah, so we still need a release. Someone's got to release it. Right. So we can't close until we get that release. When it comes to liens and judgments, they all have to be cleared. Sometimes what happens with liens and judgments, if they come up, they might be that they were taken care of, but they didn't record the release. So it's really common. Child supports, I would say, are the most common, and I'm sure that you see those on your end too, is where a parent says, hey, my child's already 21. I took care of child support. That was a long time ago. So it could have been that, they just never recorded the release. Things happen. So we'll, as an escrow officer, tell us what you'll do to get that release. So
then, we get the title report, and just like you said, we review the preliminary report, and we see, who we need to pay. If there is a child support, and I'm going to tell you a funny story. So when we see a child support, then we automatically, hey, you have to fill out the statement of information because, yes, in our community, Latinos have the same names. So what child support does in every county is they might not have your social or your driver's license, but if there's a common name like a Juan Rodriguez and they live in that area and they think that that's your home, they'll put a potential child support lien on it. And what I do is obviously we'll run the statement of information. If it does not match, which title does their part in the back scene, and whatever program you guys use, they'll match it with the statement of information, and they realize, oh, this is not yours, it does not belong to you. So then title then gives us what we call a supplement to eliminate that lien, and then automatically drops, right?
Yes, correct.
But I've seen it where it does belong to them, right? And I'll tell you a funny story before that. So I had a gentleman with his wife, they don't have kids.
Oh, I have one similar to that.
not have kids. I have them in my office, and I said, well, there's a child support lien on your property that we need to clear, and the wife looks at the husband like, well, what do you mean child support? Like, where did this child, like, no, we've been married, like, we have no kids. Do you have kids with someone else? And I'm like, I'm not starting a divorce already, but, those are the things that we have to bring up to the client. And that's when you explain to them, look, it might not belong to you. And this is a reason why the importance of completing a statement information. Title wants to make sure, because you do have a common name, that, the child support just tries to put a lien on anything that matches the name and the last name.
They want to get paid.
They want to get paid. And so when we do, when it does belong to them, which, clients can be a little tricky where they know they have child support, but they'll stay quiet in hopes that there isn't a lien. So they don't say anything. They're like, darn it, And so then what we do is we contact obviously the county, wherever it's at. And then we get their authorization, a third party authorization signed, and we'll send out the request, to the county that it belongs to. and usually it does take 7 to 15 business days, depending the county. LA County is huge. San Bernardino, Orange County, wherever it becomes more like a 1 week, right? And then the county does give us a release, right? Saying, nope, they don't owe anything. This is the demand, which says it's 0. And then we're going to provide what is called the release, which will get it to us, and we will record it and send it to title for you guys to record. And therefore, that satisfaction is already
completed.
Correct.
Completed. And sometimes you don't have one, you have multiple. So I know Escrow works very hard on getting those demands and figuring out who that money is owed to so we can get those taken care of. Another of the common type of liens that we see are mechanic liens.
Yes.
And mechanic liens occur when a work was done on a property and that person is claiming, the worker, that wasn't paid. So especially when it comes to new construction, and I'm not talking about like Toll Brothers and those big companies, more of like investors and developers that do flips on homes, there is a period that there's a mechanic liens period, or we need to have an actual recording of that it's been completed the project.
Correct.
So once that has been recorded with the county and we've met that mechanics lien period, we can close a transaction, because mechanics liens is the 90-day grace period that someone can file when the completion of the project has been done. So a lot of times I know the project was done and they already have a buyer and want to get closed fairly quickly.
Yes.
There's other ways that we can possibly close the transaction. It's a case by case, but we as a title company have to protect ourselves to make sure that no claims come back, because we're ensuring that, right?
Yes.
So we just got to make sure. So you just got to make sure that if you're like an investor developer, that you are completing that time frame, and also getting the certificate of occupancy, right, and completion done. So that's very important. And we also do see private loans a lot lately.
The private bennies, we call them.
bennies, and I've kind of been seeing a little bit more of can't locate those private bennies. So as a title company, we need that release or demand showing either that it's been paid off or that it's been satisfied. So as an escrow officer, when you can't locate who to pay off, what do you do in this case?
So when again, once reviewing, the title, if you see on the title report, you will see the mortgage lien or the private benny or the trustor and the trustee, right? And in there, what gets our attention as an escrow company is basically the year it was recorded, right? So we're like, well, wait a minute, for example, it's item number 4 on the prelim, right? But item number 4 was way back in 1950 something. But then you have a second lien, which is higher than your first lien, right? And then you'll see that the second one was recorded like in 2007. So right there and then, for example, in that scenario, I know that they had refinanced at one point. So the title company did not remove it, or something went wrong there. So when we call title, like, hey, give me a supplement, it seems like item number 5 paid number 4, right? So then they eliminated your right. But I have had those cases where it is just a private benny, right? Which I do deal with a lot of those, right? Especially right now with hard money. So I see the private benny, but the private benny, let's just say that recorded this lien or mortgage back in 1997, right? And, it's already been 20 some years. And so I asked the client, hey, do you have the information of this private benny? They're like, no, I paid them 5 years later or 10 years later, right? How did you pay them? That's the important question there. How did you pay them? Is it traceable?
Proof? Yeah,
exactly. And so some of the times, they came off of my check or, paid them, through my bank. Yeah, but banks only keep information for 5 years. So then I go to you guys and I'm like, we need to locate this private benny. Can you give me the information? Because now in the background, you guys have your own software system where you know how to locate certain people. And then I go by your lead and say, okay, we found them. I think this might be your potential private benny. So we try to contact that private benny. Sometimes we have luck, sometimes we don't. And so then, you can tell us a little bit about what happens when we can't find that private Benny?
It's funny because before coming here, I just have a situation right now where that's happening.
Oh, wow.
An individual that's refinancing right now, she borrowed 60 grand from a private Benny. However, they recorded it as a UCC filing on the prelim report. So we're showing an item on the prelim as a UCC filing, and it's showing who it was borrowed from, and it has some information. So when they
Wow, that's the first time I've heard of a UCC filing for a private Benny.
Yeah, so when we Escrow tried contacting to get a demand, they were not able to locate that individual to get the demand. No one can find this person she borrowed money from because it was a long time ago. Right. So yes, we do have a lot of resources and systems in our end to verify if something is still opened or to try to track these companies or individuals down. So we did double check on a site to see who is servicing this lien, right? And we were actually able to locate that. And so Escrow was able, with that information, able to get a demand.
Right.
And however, on the demand, it states who is supposed to get paid off. So when we try contacting that company, they say, we don't service this private Benny anymore, and we can't even locate it.
Now, when that happens, don't they tell you who they transferred or bought that private Benny? Because they're supposed to get the original note from that private.
So this
servicing
company has no track record of this. There's no track record of it, but we have a demand, and no one can track it. So what happens is, I myself and my title officer, so I'm the title representative, but I actually have a team behind me that processes the files on a day-to-day basis. So my title officer will also do his investigation, and I actually will do my investigation too. That's actually one of my favorite parts. Whenever there's challenges on files, I like to get involved, and
that's
someone says no, I'm like, okay, there has to be a way.
Yes,
there has to be a way. So that's actually my favorite part. Just natural in me. So we work together, and my title officer and their unit, they're wonderful. They make miracles happen, and we know we can close the toughest deals. So if you're ever having a tough deal that you can't close, whether you're on the buyer side or on the loan side, whatever side you're on, I suggest having us to take a look at it. And we can be a solution to your tough deals. But you can get a bond.
Yes.
So you can get a bond.
Tell us a little bit about the bond.
Yeah. So bonds are whenever, let's say, you can't locate and you made attempts to pay off someone, and we actually have to have track record.
What sample of attempts and
email.
Certified mail.
So we need to have a track of all of that, and the title officer will make a decision in that scenario, and the escrow or the homeowner will have to contact a bond company to get insurance on that, to say, hey, we made attempts and this is true that we've paid off, or we've attempted to contact them to pay them off and haven't heard back. And so think of it as a protection. Right. It's a protection, just so if it comes back, the bond company is protecting them from that lien.
Yeah. So I've done one where the client did prove that they did pay, right? So, but they couldn't get a hold of them at all because they couldn't get them to do a reconveyance. So I know when we got the bond, they showed proof that they did pay them, right? And so they did the bond to protect them from not wanting to come back and claim
that they were not paid.
That they were not paid, because when you do a private Benny, the Benny keeps an original note, which then can be sold to someone else, because there's people out there who do buy notes, right? And they say, well, they can't pay you. I'll buy the note, right? And I'll keep the original and I'll collect on that behalf for you. So then they'll pay them off half of whatever they did the note for. And now them being the new private Benny or transfer it over to them, they can sell the note. So having the original note is very important. But if you don't have the note, I know I've done, and I've sent out the title, or title gives me, we can do an affidavit of lost note.
Correct. Case by case.
Case by case.
There's
yeah.
different ways we can structure deals. So it's just a case by case. Also, if there's like debts involved or, you know, someone's in jail, we got all kinds of scenarios. So case by case. So if you have a file like that, we can always take a look at it. I know we want to talk about a little bit about types of vestings.
Yes.
And I'm sure you get asked, what type of vesting should I put my property in? So we actually have all the types of vestings that someone can put their property in. And let me just go back a little bit. So vesting is how are you holding title, right? So let's say I'm buying a property, Kelly Corona,
Right.
I'm buying a property, right? How do I want to hold title, right? Am I going to hold it by myself? Am I going to add a sibling? Am I going to add my parents?
Your husband, if
my
you have one?
husband. Are you going to want to add your kids? How do you want to share those portions? And depending on the types of vestings, they all have different consequences.
Correct.
So let's say if someone were to pass away, what happens? What if someone passes away and they have debt? What happens? So we do have a list of vestings that we can provide if you're concerned about what the type of vesting you should have. But I'll just talk a little bit briefly on the most popular types
Yeah,
of
the
vestings.
most common, correct.
The most common ones are your joint tenants. Usually you will see joint tenants as husband and wife, single, so just one person on title. You also got tenants in common.
Correct.
So let's say also if someone wanted to just show 20% of ownership and the other person owns 80%.
80%.
I mean, I've seen where there's 13 people on title. I mean, it's crazy.
I had one of those.
I've seen like
probate.
yeah,
Yeah.
17 people. I've seen 7 people when you got a lot of siblings. So you see everything.
You
in
see
this,
everything,
in
yeah.
this business. And also another type of vesting you will see is holding your property in a living trust.
Correct.
Which is what avoids probate. So and sometimes people say,
100%.
what if I pass away? It's going to roll over to my spouse, right? Well, unfortunately, we know that stuff happens. What if something happened to both of you or
Yeah.
everyone that was on title together? That's going to go through probate, right? And how does title or escrow know what your desires were, right? What if there's more other children trying to claim the property or
Your aunt or your sister or your
sister,
mom.
whoever. So a living trust is the best way to let people know what your desires and guides are. Now, your trust is not of a public record. People sometimes confuse this. People think because, let's say I bought a property and I have a living trust, well, I can transfer my property into my living trust. So my actual title will show it's the Kelly Corona Living Trust dated blah, blah, blah.
Correct.
So if one day I want to sell my house, I actually have to give a full copy of my trust to the escrow company and title company to review and see what the trust says needs to be done. Because I could probably say, hey, if I'm alive, if I ever sell this property, I'm the only one that can sign, but my proceeds are going to go maybe 50% to me and 50% to my parents.
Yeah.
So your desires, everything that is in the trust.
It's in the living trust,
It's in the
correct.
living trust. It's not recorded. So it's important that when you have a copy of that living trust, you let someone know where it is. Or if you've made someone a trustee or a successor trustee,
Correct.
or it's funny, I had a crazy one where a gentleman passed away and he had his property in a trust. And so they were selling the property. And however, in the trust, he granted the proceeds to 2 individuals.
Okay.
Well, one of those individuals, no one could locate them. And so
Okay.
we're like, well, we got 50% of
Were they both successor trustees or they were just the beneficiaries?
They were just beneficiaries.
Okay.
So in the trust, one person was acting as a successor trustee, and within the trust, it said the proceeds are to be distributed like this. And so we couldn't find this person. So after doing an investigation, and the daughter was looking through paperwork from the father's home, they were able to find a document that showed an attorney's information that was
Right.
connected to that person. They called the attorney and were able to locate that person in Europe. So
Wow.
So this person was in Europe, and when they contact her and say, hey, by the way, like this person had you listed in their living trust and to give you 50% of the proceeds. So we need you to sign this paperwork so we can wire you the money. So it took her 3 weeks to actually sign that paperwork, and it held up the transaction because she thought it was fraud. She's like, getting this money from one day to another, she wasn't
Too
even
good to be
told.
true.
I mean, I wish that happened to me,
Yeah,
right?
right?
Who wouldn't want
Call
to
me up and says, hey, we're going to give you $500,000.
Right.
All right, bring it on. I'll give you my account number, my routing number. Where do I sign?
Yeah, and so that was actually an interesting one because she was never told that she was
Wow.
listed in the trust.
Well, who passed away? The mom, the dad?
It
Or
was,
he was never listed?
if I remember, was a
Okay,
father,
okay.
gentleman, passed away, had one daughter, and I don't know if it was like someone that had cared for
Relative,
them,
yeah.
relative,
Got it.
but I just remember she was in Europe and she didn't want to sign this paperwork. She had to hire her attorney to review the documents, make sure it wasn't fraudulent.
Very smart.
And she, I mean, as someone that gets a letter like this, you have to be
very
careful.
careful.
But yeah, in your trust, you literally can state what your desires are.
Yes.
Now, one of the most common things is, what if the person is alive and they can't make decisions because they have dementia
Correct.
or have an illness, right? The most common we'll see in trust is that we'll require two doctors' letters to make sure that when the trust was created, that they were of sound mind and they know the decision that they were making.
A lot of the times that it's very important to even point out is that title sends special notaries.
Yes.
Because they won't allow just any notary to notarize them, especially on this type of circumstances. So it's becoming more common that now title companies, to protect the title company and even to protect us as the escrow company, they want an approved notary approved from, that have their fidelity bond or whatever it is, that they have enough coverage and that it's approved by the title company, right? So, that's very important to point out, because a lot of people are like, well, we have our own notary. We can just get it. And it's happened to us. We're like, yeah, my mom is not. She has Alzheimer's. We have our own notary. Yeah, it's not going to work because title's going to ask escrow, well, who was the notary?
Yeah.
Was it an approved title notary?
We'll ask who was the notary, and then we'll also always take a look at signatures.
Yes.
Right? We'll always take a look at when the person was first diagnosed.
Alzheimer's or dementia?
Dementia and Alzheimer's tends to be one of the most common ones. We want to verify when they were first diagnosed. We'll need sometimes a certified letter from a doctor. It's a case by case. So it just depends on the dates, on the times. When was she first diagnosed? When did she put it into a trust? I've seen times where the person had like dementia and they signed their trust, and the property was being transferred from this person to the trust, and the signature
did not match.
I mean, it looked like a 2-year-old's writing.
Yeah.
And that's when we have to put our our red flags up and say we have to be careful with fraudulent.
Yeah,
So
it is.
because how do we know if there's other siblings, or the intentions were to give the proceeds or appoint someone as a trustee or successor trustee in the trust.
Yeah.
So we need to just make sure as a title company that we do an investigation to verify that information.
And that is a big red flag, that if it's in a living trust and they're signing it out of the living trust, I know
That's a
title
red
right
flag.
away is like, oh, that's a
Why
red
are you
flag.
doing that?
Why are you doing that? Can we talk to them? Can we, So title does very well in asking the right proper questions, right? And so that's why it's important to choose a good, title company, a title rep that's very knowledgeable, that can assist you with these type of transactions, because, for both of us, we think outside the box, and you got to use your resources, and the people that we work with to be able to assist you, because same here, I had a transaction where the lady passed away, right? And nobody can find a copy of the living trust. It was on a living trust. Nobody could find the copy of the living trust. And my client was all like, well, how do we do it? They don't know where she left it.
Sometimes the person who prepared it keeps the copy. So
This was not an attorney.
yeah.
Yeah.
So see, that's what you always have to. If we can try to track down the information. I mean, I had a scenario like that where the siblings could not find the copy of the living trust, and they were digging through paperwork because the father never told them where he left
Call title. Title can find it, because what I did is I called Title and I said, is there any way that you can give me anything that's recorded with her information? Was a trusser recorded? Did it say an address? And sure enough, that grand deed, when she went from an unmarried woman into her living trust, it had an address of a credit union.
Oh,
So then
okay.
I told the client, well, maybe she has a lockbox or some safe box at a credit union or something. Go to the credit union, because a lot of times when you have a living trust, you give copies to all the financial institution or your 401ks, let them know that you have, living trust, and they have a copy of that.
That you made a good point, because there a lot of people, when they work for companies and they have a W-2, they have medical benefits, and actually some of the benefits are having access to attorneys to prepare a living trust.
Yes.
So that is another source that you can have a living trust created, or like you
There
said,
you
a
go.
credit union. And it's important. I always just
It
say,
is
let
important.
someone know. If you have it on a CD or if you have it in a book, give someone a copy of it, or just let them know where it is. So
Yeah.
it's super important to keep it in a safe
Safe place,
place,
and
but
let
also
someone-
let maybe a couple people know
If
where
you're
it's
going to
at.
assign a successor trustee, give them a copy of it.
Yeah, I would say give them a copy of it. You
Yeah.
know, they can't make any changes because
Yeah.
you are the primary
long
trustee.
as you're with-
Now, also another thing that I just want to mention is whenever you are putting your property in a living trust,
Yeah.
verify with the title company of, hey, is this document recordable?
Yeah.
Because I've seen situations where attorneys don't prepare the deed correctly.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
they don't mention the date, or they didn't mention the trustee, and that can actually cause an issue on title when you want to
Yes.
sell property if you have missing information. So
Correct.
it's always good to just verify it. I
Or
know
verify it with us,
or even with
Kelly
Escrow.
or Escrow, because and we'll touch on our last topic on special accommodation, since we're getting into this whole living trust and whatnot, because I'm sure you get a lot of questions on this, and I get a lot of questions and inquiries, and for me it's on a base to base. I have to know them. It has to be a client. I get a lot of phone calls with, hey, can I remove an aunt? I need to remove my son, or I need to add my son. And so, it's not just that easy to I'm just going to give him or grant him over my house. And
Yeah.
so some of the questions if it's a client that says, hey, they want to put it into a living trust, and I've had that client before, I know who I'm dealing with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So that's important. And we got to be very careful
with
on these special accommodations.
Yeah, so accommodations, if you guys don't know what an accommodation is, it means that you're making a change on title without using a title policy, paying for insurance, or using escrow. And a lot of common accommodations are whenever, let's say, I own a property, I want to add someone or remove someone and just record the document. It's not being insured through title.
Yeah.
So those are accommodations, and I know a lot of title companies are not touching accommodations. Accommodations are known to be the biggest reason why
There's
there's
fraud.
lawsuits and fraud done. So we're very careful with accommodations. We don't prepare accommodations. Escrow companies can prepare accommodations. I know a lot of escrow companies that don't, but technically a real estate attorney can prepare an accommodation for you. They can send it out for recording too, but just like you say, it's a relationship based.
Yeah.
And we actually have a waiver that we have them sign that we're not liable for
That's a good idea.
anything. We don't verify the information, so we're just facilitating the recording. So it
Yeah.
just it's relationship.
Yeah. So if you
based.
guys have any type of scenarios, or, a transaction that you guys might have, and, you run into the person passed away, we can't find them, or or you do want to order a prelim ahead of time, give Kelly a call, give me a call. We'll help you, because the more prepared you are, the better, the smoother the transaction closes.
Correct.
So we'll leave with a good note. I always ask, my, guest, What would you recommend for people out there that are trying to get into one real estate, or that they like, the title company, to work in for any title company like Orange Coast Title, the benefits that there is for it, and anybody that you think even that are maybe in your shoes, that are going to college but their interest is somewhere else. Give us a little bit of
that side.
Yeah.
I would say that you have to love what you do. You have to have a passion. You have to wake up happy every day and say, I'm going to conquer my day. Because in this business, people can feel your energy.
Yes.
Even if you try to hide it as much as possible, your energy and your body will show that. So if you show up every day with that energy and with that passion on what you do, even when you're talking to someone on the phone,
yes,
people can feel that. If
yes,
you have that motivation, that drive, and I would say organization is really key in this business. And we're always learning in this business. It's never ending. There's not one person that knows 100% of this business. And the reason is because laws are always changing.
Exactly.
Regulations are always changing. I mean, we got the AB 1033 law that was just passed this year, right? But it has to be approved through every city and county.
Right.
Even the city and the county are still learning how that's going to roll
That is
out,
exactly
right? So we're always...
Especially with these propositions, right?
With these propositions, we're always learning. So don't feel nervous if you're just getting started in the business. Connect yourself with the right people, build your team, and have a good escrow company, have a good title person, have your team of your to-go of everything.
Resource.
And I think working with the right title company and with a strong title rep is super important, because it all comes down to the relationships that the title rep has internally.
I agree.
With the underwriter, with your title officer. I mean, if you call me with the situation on a file very late at night or early morning, I guarantee you that we will do our very best to get it solved, because I have that relationship with my legal team where I can contact them after 5 and before 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So on the weekends, if we have a situation that we have to take care of it on the weekend, we will take care of it on the weekend.
Title is very resourceful, and I cannot say enough how much you guys have helped me, because for me, if I want to know the new listing on a farming area, call Kelly, hey, can you give me a farming area 927 or whatever it is, right? And she'll send me a list and be like, here's your report. These are the new listings. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to be calling those agents like, hey, congratulations on the new listing. I'm an escrow company. Would like to use your, if you need escrow services, I'm here for you. But those are phone numbers, emails only you can get with title, that they can give you these reports that helps.
Yeah, so actually,
that's very, very resourceful for me.
So farming is actually one of my favorite things. So our system allows you to pull farms. However, because we are governed by the Department of Insurance, whenever you're wanting phone numbers and emails, you can buy those off our website. Right. They charge like 12 cents for those. I mean, but think about it. If you're an agent, let's say you pick a small farm that has, let's say 100, 200 homes, and you're paying 12 cents.
Or a lender.
Yeah, you're paying for these leads. on the website, and you can narrow down your leads to where instead of getting thousands, you're only paying a couple cents for those leads. And I've had agents say, I love your guys' systems because they've gotten listings from our system. They've picked up off markets for sale by owners. I mean, I had an agent that said, oh my gosh, I love your system because I paid 12 cents for a lead. I got the seller to sell because my buyer wanted just that house. And we didn't even have to put it on the market. We just used title and escrow. They used a single compensation agreement. And it was I love to hear when my agents tell me, you know what, your tools are great. And actually, we just rolled out a feature today. As of today, our system was actually built by Orange Coast Title IT department, and we just have one website and one app for everything. In our farming feature, we rolled out where you can turn on to show you all your notice of default in your farm within the last 90 days. So that rolled out today. So if you're not registered on our website, we're now showing you the NODs in your farm, which is huge. And you get these for free. The NODs are free. So if you want to build your farm for 2024, I love doing that. It's my favorite part as well of what I do. I really do love that.
Then tell our viewers where they can reach Kelly Corona with Orange Coast Title so that they can reach you with any title needs, because like I said, I cannot say enough, the resource and the assistance that you guys provide that a lot of people do not know, and it's about asking the questions. So where can they reach you?
Yes, you guys can reach me at my email at kcorona@octitle.com, or you can call me directly at 714-592-9100. Feel free to call me, text me, email, whatever your preference is of
Social
reaching
media?
out. Social media, Title with Kelly.
Title, see, easy enough for you.
I made
guys.
it easy. So I actually changed that recently. I was like, how is it that they can remember me? Title with Kelly.
Title with Kelly. Well, thank you so much, Kelly,
Thank you
for
so
being
much.
my guest today. It was very informational, and things that you said are very important so people can understand how we work together. And I really appreciate
Thank you
coming
so
in.
much. And thank you for everything.
Thank you. Bye, you guys.
Do you understand what escrow is?